This is Richard Wolff for Democracy at Work, responding to another Ask Prof. Wolff question from our Patreon community. This one comes from Mikkel Bjorge Madsen, and I apologize if I have not pronounced it correctly. And Mikkel asks about my views regarding the so-called Nordic model of socialism or social democracy or democratic socialism. Do I think it's a progressive step? What is my attitude, my sense of that formation in Scandinavia and other parts of Western Europe, I might add, as well, and even beyond that? I'm glad to respond to this question. It's an important one, both for the United States in particular, but on a global scale. So here is the way I understand what happened in Scandinavia and what it means for the larger transition from capitalism to socialism. First of all, the most general point. All basic social transitions, from slavery to feudalism, from feudalism to capitalism, from any of them to any of the other of them in any direction. These are long, complex processes. They take different forms and shapes depending on the particular conditions and histories of each country or area where they occur. Transitions are complicated, and the transition from capitalism to socialism, likewise. Another general point to keep in mind is that transitions take time, and along the way, they can be stalled, frozen, having taken several steps along a transition, but being unable to take more steps, so that they are, if you like, stuck in a certain place, and that can last for a very long time. Having said that, let me begin by saying that the Nordic countries, who often have people who refer to them as socialists, both people who live in those Nordic countries and observers from the outside, have every right to call that socialism that they wish. There is no agency in the world that delivers certificates certifying that you or someone else is a socialist. Socialism has to do with your own self-definition, with the definitions applied to you by others, and that doesn't have to be the same. And the people in the world, being different in many ways, have come up with multiple different interpretations of what socialism means, just like they have come up with different interpretations of what capitalism, feudalism, slavery, love, and many, many of the most important things in life. So don't be in any way upset or feel that there's a problem in there being multiple definitions. The Nordic definition is roughly the following. Capitalism, that is the private enterprise system, characterized by enterprises, factories, offices, stores, in which a small number of people, the owner, the board of directors if it's a corporation, and so on, make all the basic business decisions: what to produce, how to produce, where to produce, and what to do with the profits. The vast majority, the employees, are excluded from making those decisions. They are paid for the work that they do, and that's the end of their involvement. They are paid for the work, they do the work. Those are their obligations and the reward for them. Participation in the basic decisions is not available to them. Under these circumstances, and given a market competition among capitalists, the end result has often been, and is in many parts of the world today, very bad social conditions, low wages, large unemployment, minimal public services, low levels of education, medical care, housing, transportation, and so on. In response to the poor conditions that masses of working people, employees, have suffered in most capitalist systems, it is neither surprising nor unusual for there to have been movements, including political parties, determined to change the system, to go from the bad conditions of capitalism to something better, often called socialism. In the Nordic countries, this involved political organizing, the development of political parties that were responsive primarily, or if not primarily, then in major ways, to the working class, to the employees who are, after all, the majority in all of capitalist societies. And when that happened, often, you got the Nordic socialism in response. That is, a government that comes in, taxes heavily, and uses the tax revenues, as well as its social position, to offset the hard, bad conditions of capitalism by raising the minimum wage, by providing generous, high-quality public services, including health care, subsidized education, transportation, decent housing, and so on. The Nordic countries have been exemplary in this kind of socialism. The enterprises are left in their capitalist structure. The same people, the same investors, the same rich families own, operate the businesses, the factories, the offices, and the stores. But they do so subject to a government taxation system and a government public service provision system that makes life much, much easier and better for the mass of people, as countless studies by the United Nations and others have demonstrated over and over again now for many decades. Is this a step towards other kinds of socialism? The answer is maybe. It can be. It could be the step taken by a society that wants to make the transition to socialism of a more developed kind, that I'll explain in a moment, but wants to do it sequentially by taking steps. So the first step might be Nordic type socialism. You can hear in the speeches of Bernie Sanders, of Jeremy Corbyn, of Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, and other emerging socialist politicians an argument like that. But they recognize that socialism can mean other things too. That's one of the reasons they put words like democratic as an adjective in front of socialism, or invert the words and make it social democracy. Because they recognize that another kind of socialism goes further. It's when the government not only taxes and regulates, but comes in and takes over the factories, the offices, and the stores. Some of them, or all of them. On the theory that in order to get them to serve the needs of the majority, well, the majority, through the government, must take control of them, not merely tax and regulate. Then you have a socialism that looks a bit more like what we saw in the experiments made in the Soviet Union, in the People's Republic of China, North Korea, Vietnam, and so on. And yet there are even more notions of a developed socialism in which the issue really isn't what the state's relationship is. Tax and regulate, a la the Nordic, take it over, a la Russia and China. But these other kinds of socialism drop from the macro level of analysis to the micro, who say you cannot have a system that is really different from capitalism in the fundamental ways it needs to be unless you change the organization of the enterprises. No more a small minority that owns and operates our enterprises, that keeps all the major decisions for itself. No, you have to democratize the enterprise. For these people, socialism is, first and foremost, the democratization of the enterprise, on that basis, the democratization of the economy, and on that basis, a genuine, not merely formal, political democracy. With that vision, what has happened in the Nordic states is an important step. It's one way of doing socialism, but it falls far short of the other two kinds, when the government takes over and when the focus is more on the base than on the superstructure, on the micro level more than the macro level. Can any of these be a way station to the other? Absolutely they can. Directions can go either way. Steps can be on the way, or you can get frozen at one step and never make the next. The people who went beyond the Nordic level to the Soviet never got to the democratization of the enterprise. They got stuck at their socialism. Capitalism is always changing, but so is socialism. And the understandings of socialism multiply and vary, and so do the social struggles as they determine which of these images of socialism to pursue to try to make the concrete reality of the future. Nordic socialism has taught people both what they can do and what they must do in the future to carry forward the idea that lies behind all socialisms, that capitalism is something that the human race can do better than, and we ought to be debating and struggling to do exactly that. This is Richard Wolff for Democracy at Work.